meeting thing, but it's a meeting thing. All right, let's go ahead and let's just start off with doing going around the circle. Caroline.
So I did actually get back to the DocAssembly interview I'm working on. I put encoding. I'm sort of struggling with what the code the Weaver produces, and so Michelle said she thinks that the template no longer forces certain things to be asked. I have a code block. I don't want to put it in interview order, but I don't know how to force the code block to happen. And I haven't thought about this since last week, but that's what I recall the problem is. So I'm not sure what to do about that. And equally, I just need to remember how to avoid asking the user. I know you're supposed to define the username in the interview. If you ever want to overwrite basic questions, I'm blanking on how to overwrite the basic question.
Sure. All right. Okay. any nothing else?
That's it.
That's it.
Yeah,
that's it. Okay, so overriding the question, blanking on that. So if someone can help out,
forcing a code block to run.
Forcing a code block.
Yeah. I can probably figure out the basic question thing, but
all right. Well, let's put a pin in that. Go through. We have time. Loop. Okay. Quentin.
Right. So this week we got a small UX refactor to the Weaver in. I did a usability test with Brett Harrison, who's one of a new DocAssembly developer intending to learn DocAssembly, who works in Michigan. So actually, that could be good synergy too. So I think Michigan, he's actually based in Colorado, but Michigan often hires him for projects. So it might be a good connection to, if he's not already talking about this with the Michigan folks, to make sure that he does. And it was interesting. I mean, I think I have a lot of ideas about things that are challenging in the Weaver right now. But overall, it was really smooth. The big change that's in there right now this week is just the opening screen. Instead of having, it now has cards, which I think are a little bit easier to grasp, like action-oriented buttons that you can click, but also have images. So it's a little bit more visually appealing when you first launch it. It's not installed in any server yet, although I think we could go ahead and install it on the dev server where most people are probably using the Weaver. And I am thinking about the best next steps. So this semester, I'll have 15 students who, some combination of them will probably be working on a couple of different forms that might end up being useful for, you know, Massachusetts use later to get customized and improved. So like I'll want the Weaver to be ready for them to be able to use it as a tool. So thinking about prioritizing some of the other UX changes that we'd kind of workshopped on Trello. But I think there's all these complicated dependencies that can happen. Like, what do we do first? Do we first do some cleanup of the code before we change the appearance? I think that's probably a good idea. Before we clean up the code, does it make sense to implement our idea of using an output template rather than kind of a complicated way we're doing it right now, where we load a Mako template from a file? This might be more for the backend meeting, but anyway, what it's come down to is I'm thinking my end goal is to improve the appearance of the Weaver, but I'm going to start probably with working on this idea we've had for a while, which is letting people specify a template that will be the output of the Weaver. So basically it's a template that generates just the YAML file. That'll make it a lot easier, the code a lot easier to read and cleaner. It also means that we'll be able to let people swap that template out if they're on other projects, like other states could put in their own template for what they want the output YAML file to look like. And generally, it'll just be like a much more flexible tool that we could use. So I started working on that a little bit today, and we'll see. I mean, I don't want to, it's something that won't be visible to any user really. So it's always hard to do something like that, but I think it will end up being the right thing. I'm going to talk about it more on Monday, probably. That's just what I've been working on.
Cool. Bryce.
So I've been doing a lot of the PDF stuff this week. So I started just trying to like gather all, like essentially with the idea of like we can get just something that gets us numbers that we can run through a complexity score, even if it's only like 25-50% of the numbers we want, and it's the lower ones to grab. So I started doing that. But before I started doing that, I was like, I should improve the field finder. Sorry, one sec. Sorry, talking over each other. I was thinking we should improve the field finder on the PDF stuff, and so I have gotten it now. So it does areas, like it'll find a text. It'll sort of determine if there's multiple lines. There's like a whole lot of just ad hoc rules. None of them really. I have no idea if they're going to hold. I've been trying to just do stuff on like the auto-labeled things, which was like a good selection of different jurisdictions, but all of them are completely different, and it feels like it breaks every other time. But at least we get area lines for multiple long lines in a row that don't have anything off to the left. We get. We're now also getting. Or there's a few other filters to make those not work, or to make those work, or make just finding text fields better, so we don't find as many false positives. And then also, I've gotten something kind of working for finding brackets, because there are a few jurisdictions that just do like open brace, close brace for a checkbox, which checkbox, like if you just look for a box, you're not going to find that. And so I've done a few tweaks there, and that's kind of hard because you get a whole lot of false positives with just general text, because there are a lot of things in text that look like they look like that, especially like T's and stuff. So I've got it kind of working now for at least like one of the jurisdictions that we had, but it's really kind of finicky, and it's at least something. But I'm creating that now. So yeah.
Just like a quick idea on that. Could you I know that part of it's using OpenCV, but could you switch to like processing the text layer from the PDF for catching those checkboxes?
So the issue with that is that I could maybe, the issue that you don't know exactly where the text box shows up. Like you get that here's a line of text, but you don't know like where within the line of text.
So figuring out where to put it becomes the problem.
Yeah, and there might be a thing, we could go further and just look for every time there's a open brace space close brace printed in the text, or like in the PDF, and we could get that, because that would be lower than just like doing a whole text search. And that might work, but I have no idea if those are actually text things or if they're PDF weird rendered. That's the other side of it. They look like they're text, but it's really not, because sometimes they're slightly bigger, and I don't know if that's the font or if it's something else. I'm actually not sure if they're like selectable or anything. Checking, they're selectable in these, so maybe that might work for that. But because we have something that's working now, which I'm generally a bit hesitant to try and throw or like do text search for PDF stuff, but there's a small chance that it's not text and it's some PDF drawing tool. But yeah, that stuff is in, and I'll probably spend the rest of the day trying to get all of the easy to do things of like, to make a quick complexity score of like pages, fields per page, how long are the fields, etc. I can get those really quick. So yeah, that's all I've been doing.
Cool.
Can I just throw something in to make everything more complicated?
Of course.
It occurred to me, when you were talking about the parentheses for checkboxes, there are some forms, and when I had to do fillable PDFs, I don't think that I came up with a solution for this, but there are some forms that ask you to circle the answer. And I don't think any fillable PDF software allows you to circle answers. And I don't know if that's something, I don't know if that's
Edge
something.
case.
Okay, fine. I just thought I'd throw that out there. 'cause
It's a
they-
good thing to put in the issues in the backlog, but I don't think it's okay. I think it's a way in the backlog.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, definitely. I just thought it should be on the list somewhere. That's all. Is it there? Are you saying it's already there or it just
Oh no,
It should
I'm
backlog?
Bryce would be the one who could talk to that.
I haven't seen anything like that. The closest, like, given I have mostly just been skimming really quick over a lot of different ones, and I haven't fully been
Yeah.
reading them. And so if it says circle here in like a block of text, I would have missed that. But I haven't seen that. The only like big thing left that it's like really noticeable that we don't do is tables and like things that are like here's a rectangle, write something in the rectangle. That's the only thing we don't get so far, and that's a bit more difficult to do. But because you have to try and determine if this isn't rectangle. Yeah.
What I'm thinking of maybe is that, I mean, this was a big issue. It may be that because more and more courts are at least doing fillable PDFs, maybe they are changing their forms so that you can put checkboxes or radio buttons in there. So maybe it's not an issue so much anymore, you know? But that was a big problem with
Yeah.
fillable PDFs.
Yeah, I'm sure it's very jurisdiction specific, I suspect, but it doesn't seem like we've run into that. So, but it's probably a consequence of where we're looking, right? So the forms we're getting are the PDF forms from the court websites. So unless, so almost by definition, it's probably not thinking of that as a entryway. That's not to say all the PDF forms are fillable PDF forms. That's why we have the tool that
Right.
Chris has here,
This
but
affidavit of indigency is the one where I came across it. And I think they've changed. I mean, it doesn't matter now because we already have an affidavit of indigency in Massachusetts. But that was the first place I found where you had to circle the benefit you got for category B. So, okay. Just thought I'd throw that out there.
All right. Cool. Michelle.
I haven't gotten to much, but it's mostly been form fixer forms. I can report that when fields actually don't match up with text that's supposed to go there, I've been putting ignore. That's been my text for that. And
What exactly do you mean by they don't match with the text? Just like it's like a bad match for something that should have been there, or like that's not actually a field?
yeah, it's not
Okay.
actually a field.
Yeah, I think we had that will be something we can work around. I think we had a placeholder name for something to ignore, but that we can make ignore be that, add that to the list of ignore.
Sure. I mean, if there's documentation for how to go about this process, then I can follow that, right?
There's not. We're making our own rules.
Yeah.
All right. Cool.
But yeah, and
so
I haven't
will
got to
just
check.
follow the
It's
rules
machine
that I
learning,
use,
right?
that
So,
I decide.
Exactly, we are making our own rules.
Yeah.
Or someone else said it. The computer's
I've been
making
trying
the
to
rules.
answer those questions too, right? Like, but the idea is we're just trying to get a representative.
Yes,
way of doing
ideally,
it. Everyone might do a little differently. We want the computer to kind of get the average of what people
the main thing is we want it to do it. We want to do it the way we would do it in real life. That's what we want. That's the real thing we want.
I mean,
But
but
the
not
issue is-
really.
Well, the issues that in real life we would delete and
Yeah,
get-
that,
and-
as we had this was a discussion on Friday last week when we got
Yeah.
some clarity, which is that
Oh,
we don't
sorry.
want to add or subtract fields from the forms. We want to the only thing we want from the labeler is to label the forms as they would, because if you change the number of fields, then you can't make a one-to-one matching.
Yeah.
when you go
Or if
through
you
the setup.
change the order of fields or something.
Yeah, if you change the order of field or something like that. So it really is the only thing that the labeler should be doing is changing the name of the field.
Yeah.
ignore actually might be okay for the label, like as a thing to just let the labeler spit out, because then we can always go back and do a second pass. And if it's like, oh, the labeler thought that this was a false positive, let's just mark it as like just delete that field on a, like after we go through and label it. So.
Yeah, there is a But yeah, I mean, what we want for training data is simply new labels. If one of those labels is ignore, that's fine. We just want labels. We can work with it as long as they're the same number of fields and we can map field to field and say what this is. So
Okay.
cool.
So, and the other thing is that I've mostly been using Documate because there are too many duplicate fields. Like a lot of the
Yeah,
forms.
and it
have
was
duplicate
crashing
fields.
Adobe.
Yep.
And again, that should be
so-
fine as long as the number of fields are the same. As
So
long
I
as it's
think,
not adding
so I
new.
think the number and order of the fields are the same. There's just the drop downs.
Yeah.
The choices come out okay, but I gave you an example of one with
Yeah, I haven't
drop-down
looked at 88
choices.
yet. I know I need to look at 88. That will probably get on my workflow for next week, which will become clear why when I give my update.
And the only other thing is the discussion about criminal record sealing and expungement. which
Yeah.
Doesn't seem to be.
That is probably a
Global.
management meeting thing. The short answer is that our hope to have made use of the criminal clinics, defense clinics, lit fellow is not a go this year because there's not going to be a criminal clinic lit fellow. So that we'll move that conversation to a discussion as to whether or not there are other entities that would want to do the maintenance, because that's really the question, right? It's like who would continue to maintain. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah, maintenance
This
is
is
the
sustainability,
main
yeah.
thing. Do you think if next time we put this on the table as one of the things that people would do, they might find that interesting or more compelling to make that choice, or is that not? That
I think
is not how those things work.
if we're talking about maintaining it, then it's a question of continued sustainable, workload. And the question is, someone has to decide to want to take that on. And
But not an individual, right? A department or something?
no, some type of, I mean, it could be an individual if Quentin or I wanted to take it on, but I don't think that we have that capacity. So the question is whether or not, and I say Quentin or me because Bryce has future plans.
Also, not a lawyer.
Also not a lawyer. And so the question is, we want to set something up so it's sustainable, so there will continue to be people who would maintain it, and it would be one of the things that they maintained. So that is, that's the key. And there also is just a major change with some of the expungement laws, actually, or not a major change, but there was just a change with some of the expungement laws. So that will need to be updated there. So maybe that would be good. Maybe there would be someone else who wants to take that on, but we need to find capacity somewhere. And right now, I think everyone on this call is at capacity. And so the question is whether or not there are other people we could bring in who then maybe, if Quentin or I gave a little bit of our time, would be enough of a magnifier to make it, something we could do. But that's going to need it. We're going to need to find a champion with some time, which of course is hard to do. But I had thought maybe the criminal defense clinic would be interested in that if they continue to have a lit fellow, but they just didn't because of the way who applied and whatnot this year. So, and that clinic has not sort of entirely committed as to whether or not they want to continue having fellows in the future. So it's an open question as to whether or not there will be future capacity there. So it would be premature to say, yes, they'll do it.
Okay.
So
I just wondered if they'd be more interested in that kind of position if this was also, but I guess, they have plenty of other things they're thinking about.
yeah, I think that the problem is getting someone who already, people who already have crowded plates to decide they want to put something else on their plate. And so that's the place where we're at.
And just to be, and maybe it's a good nuance to add, Michelle. So the lit fellows apply to be in a legal clinic at Suffolk in the spring. And then they have to also indicate, not only do I want to be part of a clinic, but I want to be a lit fellow. Then there's like this selection process that happens. They have to rank 3 people, 3 choices for clinics, and then the clinics pick which students are in each clinic. So that's a process that happens for Lit Fellows. And I think that's really the only way that we can think of right now to do maintenance kind of projects. The Lit Fellows are in a really good position to work on that kind of thing. David and I in our classes have student projects, but it's very hard to be able to grade them the things that we want to grade them on from things that are maintenance. So they generally start new things, which is, obviously not necessarily as helpful overall for the assembly line project, but it is the most useful pedagogical tool for the students to be able to do a project in some way from concept to a runnable prototype is what they can learn in our classes. And that's the kind of projects that I was talking about. We're going to have students selecting from soon. Both of us will have that in our classes.
They're very small time frames as well. So the amount of time that a student in a 2 or 3 credit class can devote to a project is, it's on the order of days worth of work when you sort of add
I
up all
say
the
it's
hours.
supposed to be 40 hours, but yeah, I mean, remember, like they're going to be like
That's a week. So that's 5 days.
Yeah, 1 week basically, right?
Yeah.
So 1 week every semester is not a maintenance project, especially given the.
Because they have to learn the stuff first before they can then they have
Or
to
even a
understand the
creation
code.
project for, say, the adult.
It's great for someone who's going to be with us for a whole year and also kind of expects to be doing different kinds of work throughout the year rather than a single demonstration project.
Yeah, which is why the fellows are a better bet. And they're just so you understand, there are some clinics which have very reliably have fellows, which we always can count on there being fellows. And that's a consequence of the choices of the individual directors of the programs and the relationship we have with them. So for example, family law, we have a very nice relationship with them as far as fellows go. So I can almost always guarantee there's going to be a family law fellow. Health law, I can almost always guarantee there's going to be, in fact, health law, every year there has always been a health law fellow. And juvenile defenders, I can guarantee that, but they're not, none of those overlap with the expungement because the juveniles are in sort of a different category, and it's so.
Well, I mean, there's a juvenile sealing form, which
that
be
one small thing
we've made, but it could be maintained, right?
That small part could be made. But yeah, the point is everyone has a full plate, and the question is, who can we convince to put something new on their plate? And that's, it's just a hard problem. Which is why, for the most part, what we've been doing with the assembly line group, aside from building some of the Massachusetts forms that we know we want to do, is we're definitely really focusing on building tools to teach other people how to do things and build things. So that's really the beauty of the project, is we can keep working on the tools and the process, and then other people can do the building and the maintenance, because we just don't have the capacity for that beyond a very small nub of stuff that is priorities for the project, like the appeals court forms.
I mean, it is the kind of thing that like probably the court should figure out a way to fold in, or maybe MWAC would fund somehow too.
Yeah,
into maintenance. But anyway,
yes,
something we
this
do have to
comment
confront
before.
as we grow our library of forms, and more of them are at the point where they need to be reviewed and updated. It is a larger question, like, should that be in Michigan? There's like 4 people or 5 people who just keep forms up to date.
And in my 10-year plan, the lab expands, and instead of having students for 2 credits every semester, we have them for 6 credits, and for an entire year, because maybe we get a clinic, and then that's a very different set of people that we would be working with. So I mean, but that's a long term. So just to say, yes, it's hard. Yeah, we are thinking of possible solutions, but they're all years out.
All right. Thank you. Yeah.
All right.
That clarifies. Thank you.
Cool. Hayden.
So I was working on polishing up the worksheet this week, really, to get it ready. We have a meeting today at 2:30. David and Caroline are coming, as well as 2 people from the Court Service Center to sort of demo the form and get some feedback. So yeah, I did some like language stuff this week. I fixed the PDF, made it a little bit more readable and look a little bit nicer.
And is
Yeah,
all the
that-
output, all the mathematical output is all now correct? And
There's one static number still that I just couldn't get working. But I feel like that's okay. I think that'll be just fine for the demo for them. And
Alright.
before it's really usable, that'll obviously need to change. But I think for
so what is
today,
the delta between this and MVP that we actually could put out in the world?
I mean, I think it'll be. I mean, I'll be done by next week. And I'm done next week anyway, so it's gonna have to be. But yeah. So that's the time frame that I was thinking.
I think it's very close. To be clear, I did not go back. I have not had a chance to go back and review it another time. But I, having seen it the multiple times you showed it to me before, I'm assuming it hasn't gone backwards in functionality.
No.
So with that, I'm very confident, and I just want to say you have done a I want to say this in front of the entire group, because I'm sure I'll probably say this to you individually again, but it's nice to have it on video and stuff. But you've done an excellent job in moving this form forward. It was a complicated, many moving parts endeavor. And I know that when I've spoken to you in the past, you've then heaped praise upon Michelle for having helped out so much in office hours. So I will share some of that there as well. But you have done wonderful work, and I hope you're going to be in Quentin and my classes in the future, because yeah. So I say more stuff when we're not recording, but
Yeah.
but yes.
Yeah, that's enough. That's enough of that. I appreciate it. Thank you. And
I look
couldn't have
forward
done it
to
without all
that.
of you, really. So you've all been invaluable for getting this done. So thanks.
All right. And then we're a little bit over time. My update is something that I have been doing that actually has been related to this, is in relationship to the Form Explorer stuff. So I have a sprint where by the end of next week, I'll have some Massachusetts forms available, better than like the half a dozen that we have on the Form Explorer, because we had filtered out ones without fields, and we got a lot more thanks to Bryce's tool. But I'm also building a front end to help with the form discovery and comparison, which is, maybe I'll have something to show next week as well, which is looking kind of cool. You do like a little name search, and it sort of populates here are the names, and you choose forms and you add them to a list. And then the idea is you take forms from that list, put them into another group, and then you say compare all those forms in that second list, and then it will show you comparisons between those forms. Right now, I'm still working on the search feature, but hopefully there'll be something to show next week as well. All right. Anything else folks want to